I got a new tutorial request from a local high school. They want to know how do we put photo textures into our graphic design. So let's go through that. Basically, it depends on the application, but for the most part, you're going to put photo texture into your image and then mask out what you want to show. Uh, let's start by hiding everything that I made here. I just put some text in here and dragged in. I took in some photos into Photoshop by hitting File, Place Embedded, and I have some photo textures saved in my computer. We can just put another one in here. And they specifically requested grass in their image. So if you're doing more of a graphic design thing like this, you can select the contents of the layer that you want to reveal after placing this over there. Let's just place the whole thing over that. So I have these on two separate layers, the grass on one layer above. It doesn't really matter above or below. And then whatever I want the shape to be. And then I'm basically going to select the contents of this layer by holding Control, clicking on that little hi that I typed out, and then with the grass layer selected, I'm going to just hit the mask, which is, it looks like a circle inside of a box in my tools over here, and that's going to mask out everything. So basically what that does is it's a non-destructive way of showing your grass texture where you want to show it, or any texture that you choose. So that grass still exists, so I can even hide the layer with the hi, the actual type, and still see the hi, but I can also right click over here and disable the layer mask, and that whole piece of grass, the photo texture that I brought in there originally is all still there. It's just it's hiding parts of it. So I'm going to enable it again. And then, you can choose how you want to implement that. And you can even, if you don't have like a clearly selected area yet, or you want to mask it on and off in a different way, let's do that. I'm just going to delete this layer mask. And I'm going to do a new layer mask. It's just going to be white. Basically, the layer mask, how it works is it will reveal everything in white and hide everything in black on that layer mask. So you're actually, filling in colors, but the colors correspond to how it's hidden. So what I'm going to do now is actually pick up the brush tool, and I just hit B for that. And I'm going to hide the whole thing. So I'm going to select the layer mask. You can tell by the little box around it that it's selected. And I'm going to fill it all in black by hitting Alt and backspace. And that's just going to fill in the foreground color, which is default black right now. And then I'm going to hit X to switch the colors. I'm just telling you all the shortcuts. Don't freak out. You can just switch the colors, foreground and background, and start painting in white. And then you can just reveal that photo texture by painting in white on the layer mask. So you can do it that way as well. Now, I said it depended on the application, and here I'm going to switch over from more of a graphic design feel to more of a, like I've done a painting, and this is actually a painting of mine. You can find the speed painting of it, or the time-lapse painting of it, because I didn't speed paint this by any means. It took a long time. But, you can find that on the YouTube channel also. Shouldn't be too hard to find. I'm not going to link it, but, take a little bit of time. Anyway, let's grab, I already brought in a texture over here. I'm just going to drag it outside of this hidden group that I have. You can put things in folders too to better organize your layers. I accidentally double clicked, I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm going to drag this down here. And basically, I felt that this was pretty good for this image because you don't want a photo texture. Disable this layer mask again or delete it. You don't want a photo texture that's where you're looking straight down on the grass. This is close to straight down. This is one I took, I think, at the UNC campus. But yeah, I wanted a photo texture that I could put in my paintings. Most of the stuff that you get online, and by the way, don't use textures online that aren't freely available to use, like the copyright isn't available for you to use. Go to a thing like textures.com where the intended use is to have those images used in other people's artwork, and you can freely use them. Anyway, I'm not going to use something like this for this image because grass is a bunch of 3D objects pointing up in a certain direction, and if you kind of tilt, because I can alter this and tilt it, but it still won't have the effect that I really want on here. I'm just holding control and pulling in the corners to kind of where I thought it would be best. But if I hit enter on that, it looks kind of right, but it's like oddly flat. So I'm just gonna get rid of this layer. I like this. So because it's sort of taken in the same perspective that my drawing is, I'm gonna use this. I'm just gonna flip it because I see this little section in here that I like to put down here, and I'm just gonna reduce the opacity and see where I want to place it. And sorry to go so fast, I'm just used to working very fast. I reduced the opacity. Really, fill and opacity are sorry, I said opacity. Fill and opacity are basically the same thing when you're working with a photo. Like, I can do the same thing. You just click on the word and drag left to right to quickly do that. But I always do fill. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so I get it to like kind of where it looks right. So for me, that was like 60-some%. I just want something to look roughly correct in where I'm going to reveal it. I'm going to do the exact same thing, what I just did with the graphic design, but this is on, an image, right? So let's see here. Let's go to image adjustments, and I'm going to adjust the exposure here, and basically this will allow me to play with the brightness, which it'll get brighter if you move exposure to the right, and basically you're messing with like everything that's light gets lighter or brighter rather with exposure gained, and then offset, dragging it left will change the darks to be more dark, and the or less dark if you drag it to the right. And then gamma correction kind of brings the two together. It's almost like a contrast deal. But sometimes you don't have to mess with the gamma correction. Sometimes it's just right. I think I'm happy. You just mess around with this until it looks right. But you want to get it somewhat extreme because you do want the textures to be the main thing. So I'm going to set that like that and kind of mess around with this a little bit more. I sometimes like to drag it all the way to the bottom and back up just to get it to the point where it's like, okay, that's where it looks right. Anyway, so I changed it from now because the image became more contrasted. I went from 66% fill to 44. So here I'm gonna do the layer mask thing again, so I don't destroy the image. You don't want to destroy the images you're working with, and instead I'm just gonna hide it with that black. And that time I hit Control Backspace because black is my background color. Fun shortcuts. I don't know. I'm just going over a lot of different stuff, but I'm painting in white now on the layer mask, and I accidentally zoomed instead of changing the size of my brush. My mistake. Sorry. And then I'm just going to paint in this grass texture where I want to see it in here. So you can have a little bit more photoreal look. I kind of made the decision on this painting because I do implement a lot of photo textures into my work, but I made the decision to, you know, stick with painting and not try to cheat so much, because sometimes you have that like dead look, and sometimes people can tell you use photos if you do it wrong. So you want to be careful. You want to limit it, because having something that looks like an artist did it is very important. It brings some life into the image. So don't overuse photo texture, but use it if you want to get a little bit more realistic, I guess, and you want it to be quicker. And I can still change the fill and opacity at this point. And I think I'm pretty happy with that. I just want to lighten up. So I switched the colors that I'm using. So I'm on black now. I'm going to hide some of the edges because I don't like how extreme they are. I'm just going to basically soften up that look a little bit. So in this case, basically, the fact that I had a drawing under it helped a lot. It helped to form what I was putting down. You know, the other thing is I'm mixing the colors from my painting and the photo by use of the opacity and fill. It helps have color variance in all of this. If you feel your colors are way off, go back to selecting the actual layer instead of the layer mask, and then you can hit either Control B for the color balance, and you can balance out the color any way you see fit. You can select midtones, highlights, shadows to change the color on that so it actually fits your drawing. And you can also hit something like Control U, and that'll just kind of alter the hue and saturation of what you're working with. But it does it as like a flat tone. I generally don't use the hue too much. Saturation I use quite a bit. So there, I kind of like that. The other thing is, if you're implementing it in this sort of way, you usually want to hide the fact that you used a photo texture a little bit. So the difference between this and the sort of more graphic design feel, where you do want it to look like a photo, but you're like crisply, it's more crisp. You understand? Anyway. That effect is different in that you want it to look like a photo. I'm rambling on, I'm sorry, but basically you want to select filter, blur, and smart blur, and get the photo to look more like a painting if you're doing it in this way. Basically bringing threshold up will make it sort of softer. I don't know how to explain that filter other than that, but it'll blend it into a painting a little bit better, and you don't need to blend it into anything if you're doing a graphic design look. So that is the tutorial for this thing. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something. I hope I didn't go too fast for you. So keep learning, keep creating. Okay, bye.